I am a material girl. Let's get into it now. A spoiler free movie review of The Materialist, starring three superheroes in a non superhero movie. You have Dakota Johnson, aka Madam Web, Pedro Pascal, who is going to be Reed Richards in the new Fantastic Four movie, and you have the one and only Chris Evans, aka Captain America. Can Dakota Johnson recover her public image or her image with me? Not that she cares about how I feel about her movies after Madam Web. And I was actually a big Dakota Johnson fan prior to Madam Web. And even I thought, man, if an actor does one movie, is it really going to change my perception of them? And it wasn't just that the movie was bad, it was also how she handled it that made me think a little bit differently about her. But I loved her in Peanut Butter Falcon, Cha Cha Real Smooth. And I think most people still associate her with the 50 Shades of Grey movies. And I never even got into those movies. But what this movie is about, she plays a young New York City matchmaker. She works at this business where it's kind of like a Bumble, except instead of doing it on the app, you work with a person who helps you find people to date. So, kind of like a travel agent would find you places to go and set up your trips. You go to this person, it's very high end concierge, like, okay, here's what I want, here's what I'm looking for. And her job is to set people up. And she's really good at her job. At the start of the movie, she has been responsible so far for 9 marriages, and she loves doing it. Problem is, it starts to affect how she sees people. She sees bank accounts, she sees height and weight. She looks at people just as stats. And she has an ex-boyfriend, played by Chris Evans, and then she meets a new guy who is a super rich, successful guy, charming, good looking, played by Pedro Pascal. So what we have is a classic love triangle between, does she want to go back to her ex, who has a lot of imperfections, and you find out more and more details, how long they were together, why they broke up, or does she want to go all in on this new guy who is coming in, sweeping her off her feet, and able to give her a life that she only imagined having? Because dude has a lot of money. And there are 3 things this movie did and brought back that has me excited for rom-coms, which the rom-com genre has evolved a lot since the 90s and early 2000s, where we might associate a lot of Adam Sandler movies where the overall tone of them is a lot more comical, probably leans more into the calm. And I think there are still those type of rom-coms coming out. Look at Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. You still have a genre that leans more into those classic things that just make you feel good, just make you not really have to use your brain a whole lot, and they're very predictable. And The Materialist also still falls into that rom-com genre, but the comedy is much different. It's much more subtle. So the 3 things I feel it is bringing back: one was the classic trailer. A version that they released of the trailer for The Materialist had a 2000s-esque voiceover, which I thought was perfect. We have not seen that in a very long time because that style of trailer is so outdated. You don't really put out trailers where you have the big voiceover guy anymore, because it just doesn't really fit in today's world, doesn't really make people want to see movies anymore. I think trailers have a really hard time fitting so much into 2.5 minutes, but I really enjoyed the version they put out with that voiceover, because it kind of gave me a different perspective going into this, thinking, okay, they're going to try to bring back that 2000 style rom-com, but make it feel very modern. Number 2, they brought back smoking, which is not good whatsoever. I don't promote it, don't encourage it. But just to see smoking in a movie again, I thought was a really interesting play, because that's just something you don't see anymore. Back in the 80s and 90s, you'd see it all the time and not even think about it. I think just the idea of putting smoking in a movie in 2025 is a really bold statement. So to me, that was saying, let's bring back some of these classic Hollywood things. Is it weird to say things from the 90s and early 2000s are classic Hollywood things now? But it is, because much around the 2000s, where we started to see really how bad smoking was and stop trying to promote it to young people, which I still believe, like, you should not be promoting smoking or vaping or anything like that that just has a crazy effect on your body. But I think there's something, oh, I hate to say it, there's something cool the way it looks on screen, knowing that they're not smoking real cigarettes, because I don't really see Dakota Johnson's character and think she's going to be one to smoke. And when she does, it makes me feel a different way about her. And number 3, it brought back really witty dialogue. which I think that's a thing that doesn't really get emphasized enough in modern rom-coms, is having great quotes, having great monologues, having moments that are so impactful that you could pull them from this movie and start to place them onto these other iconic moments in rom-coms that we all remember. Because if people are still saying the monologue from When Harry Met Sally is one of the best rom-com monologues of all time, I'm going to throw something through the window next to me here because I'm tired of the same old things getting referenced all the time. We need new moments like this. And why haven't we had new moments like this? Is because nobody is writing them. And now in this movie, there are those moments where it hits you in the feels, not only on an emotional level, but even on a comedic level. Where are all the movies with great movie quotes that we used to have back in the 2000s, 2010s? It was one of the only movies I've seen this year that I thought everything on the page was as important as everything being shown on screen. Not just the big stars, not just the director. They thought we need to make a great script and turn it into a great movie. Not just, okay, let's take a decent script and then kind of figure it out as we go. Maybe in editing through marketing, we can make this movie profitable. There was also a lot of great chemistry between Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans, between Dakota Johnson and Pedro Pascal, which really emphasized the love triangle. And as the viewer, you are rooting for different people to end up with other people. And that was the fun part about it. And I know people, I guess, hate the love triangle trope at this point. I know even some actors will say, I don't want to be cast in a movie where there's a love triangle. And people will be like, okay, we won't put you in a love triangle. They get there and they're like, read the script. I'm in a love triangle. So I feel like that formula is probably a little bit cliche, but in this case, it works so well because at times I was like, oh, I want her to end up with this guy. No, 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 I want her to end up with this guy. No, she should definitely end up with this guy. I think the love triangle, as cliche as it might be, it works, especially in this movie, because the two guys are so different. One of them is down on their luck, but he's the old boyfriend, and there's always those feelings you have towards your ex in this situation with Dakota Johnson. And then you have the new guy who is flashy and new and has all these things he can flaunt and money that he can just throw around. This movie comes to us from director Celine Strong, who I mentioned in last week's episode, had her debut with Past Lives, and I think is really starting to create a style for herself, which I love the use of intimate cinematography in this. I also love that even though we've seen New York City 1,000 times in movies, it really felt like a character within itself because you had these really big up close and personal shots between all the lead actors, but then also peeled back a little bit and showed you New York City in a fresh way. And I thought that was really like the backdrop of it that fit perfectly, paired with a really great score throughout the movie that was subtle and the way it set itself apart from other rom-coms. And maybe even this was just a budgeting thing that they didn't have money to spend on a lot of songs that were well known, because that's what you see in a lot of rom-coms. It's just like, all right, let's throw in some songs that are popular right now that'll hit with the demographic we want to go see this movie. But instead of that, they used a really great score that at times was like really kind of charging and pushing the tension along. I thought that fit perfectly with the backdrop of New York City and all these really great, well-dressed people. Dakota Johnson's fashion was at a 10. Pedro Pascal was also like very sophisticated and rich looking. And then you have Chris Evans, who just looks good in anything. But Celine Strong has this blend of modern and classic romance. And I think that's what really made this movie set itself apart from anything else out there right now. And what really is giving her films right now a very unique profile. So the cast was stacked. 3 really great actors who are very highly in demand right now. So much so that I wonder how many dates they actually had with Pedro Pascal to film this movie, because he is in so many things right now. I mean, Last of Us, Fantastic Four, dude just pops up everywhere. And I think at times that just kind of showed a little bit, because how can you be so in demand and in so many things and also dedicate enough time to really have your character have enough presence throughout the movie? I'm starting to feel the same way about Sydney Sweeney too, where she's in so many things right now and used in the marketing for all these movies and posters and trailers. And then you actually watch the movies and you think, man, I bet she was just filming this in between filming something else. But the social commentary was also top notch. There were some lines that were really impactful from these characters that you really felt it when they said them. And the balance of humor was also perfect. One of my biggest complaints, though, in movies right now that just triggers me, and we got to stop doing this. Stop putting the iPhone alarm sound in movies. Use a different tone, use something else, because whenever I hear that tone, that I start freaking out. I feel like I'm waking up out of a dream. I'm about to be late for work. Let's stop putting the iPhone alarm sound in movies. Even the phone ringing is kind of annoying. If you're gonna bring stuff back, just bring back them having, for some reason, a classic alarm clock. So this movie really lived up to my expectations. It is rare for me to find a perfect movie, but this one I think is really close. It's hard to compare it to Past Lives too, because they are two very different films as far as the story. Past Lives is much more emotional, and this one has more humor and overall, I think, just more romance. But they're both fantastic and close to perfect. For The Materialists, I give it 4.5 out of 5 dating services.